Welcome to Fierce, Fun, Feminine, and Other F Words. I'm Christine Elizabeth, and I help women unstuck themselves. Today's F word is fences, also known as boundaries. Do you have them? Do you know why you need them? Let me tell you, I did not learn this until later in life. I didn't know how to do it. I was afraid to do it. I know all about it right now. And if you are finding yourself in a very difficult relationship, a high drama relationship, or maybe you're just feeling tired because you can't say no to anyone, this episode is for you. Let's get started. I love thinking about boundaries as a fence. And here's why. Fences come in all different shapes, sizes, and design, right? You have a chain link fence, you have split rail fence, you have full-on privacy fences. A chain link is a pretty good barrier, but things can't get through it very easily unless they're teeny, teeny, tiny. Or a split rail, that's the thing you can kind of bend down and crouch through and get to the other side, right? It's there, but there's a big hole. Privacy fence, it can be 6 feet tall or taller, and you can't see through them at all. Another way to think about setting a boundary could be walls and windows. Where do you need a wall? A privacy fence. And possibly, where do you need a window in that fence? Right? Walls and windows. It's another way to think about it. I love this topic. It's something that's very appropriate for every single person listening to this right now, because all of us have areas that bug us, and oftentimes they're areas we don't have strong enough boundaries. For myself, the things I complain about the most are usually places where I have not set fences. I haven't put a boundary out there. And it doesn't have to be another person. It could be a radio station. It could be a TV station. It could be a news outlet. If I find myself frustrated and chronically mad about it, it's not their fault. It's my fault that I'm participating. I didn't give myself a fence around that situation. So remember that the things you complain about most are often places where you have not set good boundaries. Okay, so let's just talk about what a boundary is not before we get into them. A boundary is not something that we place on another person. You cannot place a boundary on someone. This boundary is a fence, remember? When you put a fence up in a yard, you are not dictating what someone is doing in their own yard. You are protecting your own property. That fence is there to serve you. It's not there to tell someone what they can do. It's telling you what you will allow on your property. So I can't impose a boundary on another person. I don't put up a fence on my property to control another person's behavior on the other side of that fence. But it does control what happens on the side toward me, on my property, on my side of the fence. That's why I love the idea of thinking of a boundary as a fence, because you cannot control or enforce someone else's behavior. All you can do is protect your little space, your personal bubble, your property. That fence is there for you. And ultimately, it is not selfish. That fence is all about self-love and self-care. It's also a form of self-respect. And I did not learn how to set fences, put up boundaries, however you want to call it. I didn't do that until I was well into my 40s. I struggled hard with this issue. And part of it was I lived under a different belief of serving, and I was almost in martyrdom. And that is a sign that you need better fences. Feeling like a martyr and always doing things for other people and not being able to say no, girl, let's put some boundaries up. That's a sign. And I was at that point. And it was a point of self-respect for me because behavior was happening around me that made me feel awful, horrible. And a lot of it was directed toward me. And that was about a toxic friendship, someone I didn't understand. I didn't understand the behavior. I had no experience. This was a narcissist. I had no experience with narcissist, true clinical narcissism. I didn't know someone could be so horrid. So to me, I thought, well, if I just try a little bit more, maybe I'll do it this way. I was bending over backwards for this person who wasn't thinking about me more than 1 minute a day. So that was really one of the earliest things that happened in my life that taught me how to build fences. So, hey, there's one good thing about narcissists being in your life. If you ever want to learn how to set boundaries, that relationship will do it for you. It's not easy, but it will do it. And that relationship, by the way, is a full-on privacy fence. It's a barricade. That person is not ever allowed in my life again. It's just never going to happen because they don't change. And that's the thing with fences. You decide what is best for you. For me, I know I have this, oh, maybe they're okay now. Maybe they're healed. I have this unicorn way of thinking and seeing people at their best self. And there are some people, sadly, they can't clinically heal. They're not even realizing they need to. They have no regard for someone else. Well, that was tough. It took me a long time to realize this has to be a full-on barricade. I had to build a moat with a brick wall around myself against narcissistic abuse. And that's really what it was. So right now, in current times, I'm recording this in 2021, it seems like boundaries are kind of out the window. And let me give you an example. How many times have you been asked by someone that is not that close to you if you've been vaccinated? Do you ask them when their last pap smear was? No. This is private information. That's a boundary that used to be a given. And this pandemic has just blown boundaries out the window. People are full on asking even complete strangers. And I understand if someone has some type of fear or health risk, but remember, you don't get to ask someone or demand someone's behavior on the other side of your fence. You can only control what's on the inside around you. So going up to someone and asking them if they're vaccinated does not entitle you to have an answer yes or no, because you're crossing a line on private health information. That's just a tiny example that all of us can relate to, because if we want to participate in travel, let's say right now, you do have to divulge that information if you want to go overseas, for example. You're going to have to either declare you're vaccinated, declare you're immune, declare that you're negative on a PCR test, any of that stuff. You are doing that because you want to go somewhere, right? That's you divulging the information voluntarily. But if someone comes up and asks you a private question, you don't have to answer that. If that's a private boundary, that's none of their business. Same thing about finances. I've noticed this really a lot, at least in the Seattle area. I don't know if this is the same where you live. There are some areas that are different all across the United States. I don't know about where you live and what country you live in, but finances used to be a private topic. You kind of could talk about, oh, they must make great money because look where they live. And of course, now we know people live out of their means. I mean, you can't dictate or know if they're successful financially based on where they live or how they live, because some people don't know how to manage money. But I was taught you never ask someone how much money they make a year. You just don't. You don't ask somebody, how much did you pay for your car? What? This is a question that I hear all the time. It's not okay. Is it okay for you, for someone to ask you how much money you make a year? And I am noticing it's not my generation doing it. So Generation X and older, they're not doing this. It's the younger generations that don't have a boundary when it comes around these things. And I don't know what that's coming from, and that's not what this episode is about, but that's also a boundary. You can put it around yourself, and you get to say, that's not if somebody asks you how much you paid for your car, or, how much did you make last year, or what does that job pay? If you don't want to answer it, you have the right to say, I'm not really comfortable discussing this right now, or that's not something I talk about. It's private information. You can say that. That's putting a fence up around your life. That's okay. It's okay that they ask if that's where they live, right? That's their culture, maybe. I don't know, that you can't control and enforce someone else's behavior, but your fence is your boundary. That's the line that you don't have to cross. So let's just go into why boundaries. Let's just talk about that first. One, I can attest to this 100%. Boundaries, when you have them, when you put up fences in all different areas of your life, you get an instant self-esteem and confidence boost. You have control. control over you and your little world and what you're going to allow, right? Instant. It improves your relationships. It does. They might not like it, and I'm going to get into that, but it will improve. They conserve your mental energy. Oh my gosh, is there anyone in your life you ever had to build a fence with to say, I love seeing you, but we can't talk about this issue or this topic because we don't agree, and it just drains me. Maybe you didn't say it like that. Maybe you were just like, I love our time together, but can we not talk about this? I have set in my beauty salon, I have a boundary. We don't allow politics, religion, or COVID. None of it. My team, my staff, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to bring it up because if you think about going in a beauty salon, if they have 8 clients in a day and everybody wants to talk about the vaccine, they've talked with every single client for 8 hours straight about the COVID vaccine. That's going to kill morale of my staff. That's one thing. They're not going to want to do that. But also, it's not a neutral territory. It can be mentally exhausting. So that is a good thing for setting fences. You can save and preserve mental energy. They provide space for your healing and growth. This is why I had boundaries and fences set up in my life. I needed healing and growth. And when you set them, I'm telling you, it works. You start to feel like you can breathe. Boundaries also protect your rights. What are your rights? Your basic rights. You have a right to say no. Now, maybe in some countries, I'm not sure, in some religions, if you're practicing in a certain faith and you're not allowed to say no to a man, I guess I can't really address it here if, in this context. I'm talking about women that have the right to say no. You have the right. A no is a full sentence, full stop. You don't even have to explain yourself. You can just say no. Boundaries protect your respect. You are entitled to be treated with respect. That is a God-given right. You should have respect. They meet your needs as much as they're going to meet someone else's. Why do your needs have to take a back seat? That's a right. You have a right for your needs to be met. Remember, if you have been with me for any length of time, I talked about the hierarchy of needs. It is food, water, shelter, love, and connection. Are you being denied love and connection with girlfriends, time away, healing things, like that kind of thing? Your needs. I'm really praying you're not being denied food. We're not going to go there, but just simple things like meeting your needs. These are rights of yours. Boundaries protect those. I had to build fences around myself because this is why it's important to me. I had unhealed childhood wounds. I grew up in a very contentious home, domestic violence, all kinds of things that little kids should never witness or see. And so when I got married, I had a really hard time with someone that wanted to scream and smash things. I couldn't be around it. It was a boundary for me. And so when I first got married, I said to my husband, you raise your voice, you throw something, I'm out, I'm leaving. And I didn't mean leaving the marriage. I'm leaving. I have to leave the building. I can't be around that. I won't be around that. I said that, and he didn't do it for a very, very long time. Wow, until maybe just a few years ago. It was the first time I ever saw him smash something. And it triggered the exact thing I was trying to protect myself from. I felt those childhood wounds flare up, and it was scary. So for me, building fences around what I knew I needed to heal from was crucial to be able to function in any form in a healthy way. When he didn't do those things, before he smashed something, it did allow me to heal. It took me some time. I had to walk through the process, but I was able to heal and grow into adulthood as not a traumatized human, right? So that I could witness certain things and not be traumatized. But I'll tell you, it was even to the point I had fences around that in my marriage and also what I could watch on movies. You know, there's some movies that, what is the movie, the Christmas film? The one where the little boy, his tongue gets stuck to the frozen flagpole or light pole. Christmas Story. Okay, A Christmas Story. People love it. It's a classic, right? In the beginning of that film, it's an old black and white movie. In the very beginning, I don't know if it's black and white now that I'm thinking about it, but anyway, they fight. The family is fighting. There's a scene in there that was just screaming and yelling, and the little boy, you could sense his tension. For years and years and years, I couldn't watch that movie because of that scene. I had to set a boundary around what was okay for me to take in. If someone wanted to watch that movie in my family, I would go in the other room and read a book. I didn't even want to be within earshot. Do you see how this protects you? It doesn't control the other people. It's protecting you. That's why we have fences. That's why we do this for ourselves. I'm happy to say I can watch that film now. It still bugs me, but I'm to the point where I'm healed enough that it doesn't trigger me. That's what boundaries do. Words matter. Words matter for me. Words hurt. That was another reason I needed to set boundaries. If someone attacked me directly or another person, I have the tendency to be empathetic in the extreme sense. So if you know what an empath is, I have a lot of that. So if you're an empath, you can relate, you feel things deeply. I can feel when an animal gets their feelings hurt or feels scared. I can feel when a child is afraid. I can feel what a woman feels if her husband says something to her that maybe it puts her down. I felt things for other people as much as I could feel them for myself. Words that I knew crushed someone's spirit crushed me. I had to build fences around people that used words that way. And it's funny because there were certain times where I was stronger than others, and everybody's going to be different. I could tolerate a football coach yelling at his team, his little team, maybe it's junior football. I could handle him saying, "Get out there, push, you're running like a girl." I know that's wrong, okay? It didn't bother me though. That didn't trigger me. I didn't need a boundary around it. I needed a boundary when someone was truly ripping someone apart or trying to intentionally hurt someone to make themselves feel better. I see coaching most of the time, 99% of the time, those people are volunteers. They just want to bring the best out of the player or the athlete. And I know in my mind that didn't bother me. Some people it really does. Well, unless they're really berating a child, singling them out and abusing them, a coach is going to use strong language, right? But you can't enforce that. You just have to set a fence around yourself and your child. If they struggle with that, that's something you're going to have a conversation with, because children need to learn boundaries too. And it's something that you don't think about. How is your child doing on a team? Are they struggling with their coach? Why might they struggle with this coach? Is it triggering something in them? Maybe it's time to have a conversation about how to build a fence and use the analogy of fences and teach them. Or have a conversation with the coach and say, "My child is struggling with your coaching style. We really want to be on this team, but when this happens, this is how my child feels. So we need to set a boundary in place." And I'm giving an example and I'm jumping the gun. You could say something like, "Next time this happens, because I want my child to participate, they are going to excuse themselves from the team, get out of earshot, and then come back when you start the drills again." Something like that. Because you're not going to change the behavior of what's happening on the other side of the fence. It's all about protecting you. That's going way ahead of myself, but okay. The other reason, so I needed boundaries because I overextended myself. I am the queen of not resting until my head hits the pillow. It's still true for me today. I just have go and stop. Those are my two modes. But now I do it because of passion. Before I did it, it was because I was trying to fill a void. I had to start putting fences around my time. I didn't remember I said my self-esteem and confidence, like all of those things are affected when you don't have good boundaries. Well, years ago, mine was kind of in the gutter. And I would say yes to everything because I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be liked. And I had no fence. People saw me like wide open. They were like right in my property going, I need you to do this. Okay. Come do this for me. Okay. And I was a mom of toddlers. So, I mean, I'm already trying to do motherhood, brand new mom with 2 babies under 2 years old and running around doing all kinds of things and married, right? If you are in that situation, time to put up some fences. When trust is broken in a relationship, you absolutely need boundaries. You can't rebuild trust without it. You can't sweep it under the rug. There is talk about you can reset your thought process and work on your neuroplasticity and think about your partner in a new way and build new neural pathways. And I am here to tell you, yes, that's possible, but not without some boundaries. It is not out of the ordinary to say, if this happens, this is going to be my response. That had to happen in my marriage. I had to set those boundaries. And I'll tell you, it is a true make or break kind of deal breaker. So these are things that happen for me personally. How about for you? Let's talk about different kinds of fences you can build in your life or why you might need them. Because, and I want you to think, if you're a mom, I want you to think about your kids too. But think about you first. But when I put on your oxygen mask first, okay? The boundary is your needs first. That's what we want to work on. Then we're going to take care of our littles. But this is so important. And I hope some of you out there are in your 30s or even younger, because if you can learn this younger, when you move forward in life and you get into all of the tough parts of adulthood about kids or money or mortgages and all the pressures of all the things, having healthy boundaries is going to make it so much easier for you if you learn it now before you get into tougher situations. Okay, first thing, think about physical boundaries, physical fences. Where do you need it? What makes you uncomfortable physically? An example of this could be too much PDA, public display of affection. Maybe you don't like that. Maybe you're more private and your partner wants to be more public with their PDA. Well, you can set a fence around that. You can put a boundary around that and draw the line for what you're okay with. Okay? We're going to talk about how to do it. What about this? This is into the sexual intimacy part, but you absolutely have to have some fences around that. If your partner is more comfortable doing things that you're not, that has to be mutual, my friend. You need boundaries. You get to say no. What about dating? Okay, this one's big. I'm not in the dating world, but I have women in my life that are, and I'm hearing all about the crazy stuff that's happening. It is a jungle out there. Oh my word. Is it like this everywhere? Because in Seattle, I know for a fact, women in their 40s are just, they're hitting their head against the wall with some of the stuff they come up against. That should be a whole other episode because it could be comedy. But some of the physical fences that need to be set around dating are very important for you. What are you comfortable with? Because you get to control what happens in your area, in your yard, around your body, in your bubble, on your property. If you don't want kissing on the first date, that's your fence. If you are saying, I'm not going to be sexually intimate with this person until, I don't know what date, 5th date, whatever it is for you, that's your fence. It has to be honored, right? Set those things before. Don't let it be swayed. That's your fence. Your fence can be flexible in anything, but when you're first getting out there and you're practicing, really try to enforce it. You'll be really proud of yourself for doing it. Okay, how about emotional boundaries? Do you hate it if someone says to you, calm down, settle down? Or how about if someone tries to fix your situation instead of listening? Those are emotional boundaries. You get to say this. If I'm passionate about something, please don't ask me to settle down. If you do, I'm going to XYZ. Next, set the boundary. Say, I feel very not heard when you tell me to settle down. So I would like you to not do that. And if you do that, I am going to leave the room. That's an example of what a boundary would look like. So if the person doesn't honor the boundary next time, you leave the room. They're going to go, oh, I didn't respect their boundary. It's just an example of how an emotional boundary might feel. You might have the spouse or the partner that wants to fix your problems, and you just really want them to listen. You can set a boundary. It can be, next time I'm sharing about my day and I'm going on about the issues going on with it, it would be really helpful for me if you didn't try to fix it. I just need you to listen. And if you do try to fix it, I am going to tell you or ask you to stop trying to fix it and just listen. That's a boundary. That's a fence. So it's not shutting them out. It's not a privacy fence. That's a pretty easy boundary to set. And then you get to stop them if they're trying to fix your problems, because women, we just want to talk. We don't want them to fix everything. We just need an ear, right? Men, they're solution oriented and they just want to fix it all the time. Just listen to us. You can even tell them the words if they need it. Here's an example. Next time I'm complaining or going on about a problem that I have, I don't want you to try to fix it. I just want you to listen. Maybe just say, that sounds like a really tough situation. Or maybe say words like, oh, that makes sense. I see why you're frustrated. Give them the words. Perfect. It's like putting a sign on the other side of your fence that your neighbor can read. Instead of saying no trespassing, keep out, you can say, this is my emotional boundary when I'm venting. It'll say, tell me that makes sense. That's something you can do with your fence. You get to create it, right? What about this one? This is an emotional boundary. And I employ a bunch of 20-somethings, and this is something that comes up all the time. Again, people cross it, and I never really thought about it until I have one staff member that really despises this question. So when are you guys having kids? That question crosses a boundary. Really does. Now, way back in the day, that's all women aspired to was your grandmother and everybody would prep you to be, what do you want to call it? Presentable. We're going to put you out on the market, right? And you're going to get picked up by the most eligible bachelor, and you're going to be married, and he's going to be a great family that's going to take care of you, and you're going to produce children. You're going to have a happy home. And it was this whole thing. And I'm going way back to the Victorian era. Well, fast forward to 2021. It doesn't look like that anymore, Grandma. You don't get to say that. She might not want to have children. We already know birth rates are down in the United States a lot. But also, she might not be able to have children. And we're asking, when are you going to have kids? That's an emotional boundary for someone. So it's hard because we can ask somebody that question and not realize they have a boundary for it. But they can set the boundary and say, that's not something I'm comfortable answering right now. And if that's you, you get to say that. You don't have to answer their question. That's your boundary. It's huge. What about if you have, there's a lot in the emotional department because that's what we need to protect, right? Another example might be your partner doesn't like your circle of friends. Or you might hang out with a circle of friends that's older than you, or they have some kind of comment and there's snarky comments about your friends. Whatever the reason is, maybe they don't like your partner doesn't like the hobbies that you and your friends do. Whatever it is, you get to set a boundary there. I really enjoy spending time with you. I love you. It could even be your spouse, right? I love you, but these are my friends, and it really hurts me when you say things about them. So I'm going to ask you to kindly, unless you can say something nice about them, not say anything at all. Boom, done, boundary. If you can't say anything nice about them, don't say anything at all. If you do, then fill in the blank. Because again, you can't enforce what they say. You can't enforce their behavior, but you can control yours. So what will you do if they continue to cross the boundary? That's how it works. Okay, intellectual boundaries. Again, current topics, current events. This is huge right now. Political. Have you ever had a conversation with someone who makes you out to be stupid or uneducated because you don't agree with them politically? Wow, we have been through that in the ringer in the last couple of years in the United States. Or maybe it's faith-based. They treat you like you just don't know anything because you don't agree with them. You don't see their way of thinking. Fence. Build a fence around that baby. You are not dumb. Now, I'm going to encourage you, if you have an opinion, don't take it because the TV said so. Don't take it because the internet said so. Own your opinion and know why. If you can't reason why you have an opinion, you're going to get bounced around in the wind all over the place. A fierce, fun, feminine woman has an opinion rooted in her core values. Why do you have that opinion? This has nothing to do with the boundaries. This is a sidetrack, okay? But if you do have an opinion, own it. Know why you have it. Stand up for it. Be able to defend it with grace and respect for the other side, knowing that they're not going to have maybe the same core values as you. Now, back to the boundaries and building a fence, when someone wants to argue a political, let's just do Trumpster versus not, because he's so easy, right? He's so easy everybody in the world can relate to the division with Donald Trump versus not Donald Trump. If you're a Donald Trump supporter and you don't want someone to look down on you as if, how could you? Because I've heard these actual words, how could you support him? I can't even be your friend anymore. Well, if you are a supporter, be able to give concrete reasons of why and have a healthy conversation. But if that person won't give you the respect of sharing your point of view, your solid, educated answer, they treat you as if you're stupid, uneducated, not worthy of a friendship, fence. Build a fence. You're allowed to have your own political opinions. You're allowed to have your own faith-based opinions. You are not stupid because of them. Don't let them insult your intelligence. You need a fence around that. Financial boundaries. Okay, here's another one. This mostly happens when you're in a marriage or some type of a partnership. An example, joint accounts versus separate banking accounts. How money is spent. Maybe, you want to set some type of, if you ever go over this dollar amount, let's have a conversation. Oftentimes this happens with the person that makes more money in the relationship. They might be the breadwinner, let's say, and they'll say, you don't have a budget maybe, but if you want to go out and spend $1,000, they want to know ahead of time. Maybe they do the banking. Maybe they want a heads up. It's okay if that's you. It's okay to say, hey, if you want to buy something that costs over XYZ amount of dollars, let's have a conversation first, because I want to know how to budget for it, plan for it, not be surprised in the bank account, whatever. It's not controlling the behavior of the spender. It's just saying, can we have a mutual fence here that both of us are going to honor and respect? It will save you years of arguing if you can have agreements like that. Okay, so let's say you have all your boundaries set and you're figuring it out. You know what boundaries you want, and you've identified the people that really just get your engine going. They trigger you like crazy, and you have boundaries and fences all over the place, right? Well, what happens if they break it? What are you going to do? How do you handle it? Well, sometimes, first of all, it is unintentional, because there is a chance that you built a fence around some topic, but you didn't tell every single person in the world. For example, you could be in a dressing room, and the sales clerk could say, well, if you were just a little bit taller, that would look better on you. Ooh, no one's allowed to talk about your height because it's been something that around you, because it's something that triggers you. Well, that salesperson doesn't know that height is something that bothers you. You didn't tell her. So you're going to have to take some of the things where people jump over your boundaries, and you're going to have to internalize them. You don't need to have a full-on conversation with a complete stranger of why that's a boundary. She doesn't need to know that your height is a trigger for you, that that's something that you're working on, you're trying to heal through, whatever. Don't waste your energy on that. Sometimes you have to internalize when someone breaks a boundary. You just do. Save your energy. Okay, now let's move to when it's someone close to you that breaks a boundary. It's time to restate your boundary if they jump your fence. It's time for you to put it out there and say, hey, maybe I didn't explain myself very well, but remember I said this, it hurts me when you talk about Lisa that way, for example. She's my friend and I need you to respect that. If you can't respect that, I am going to leave the room. If they are a chronic boundary breaker, I'm going to have some tough love here. That's someone that's going to have to be distanced from you until they can learn to respect you. If they will not honor your boundary, what are you going to do with that? So you do get to restate your boundary. Maybe you didn't make yourself clear enough. Maybe they didn't understand. Because remember, if they break the boundary, you can't control their behavior, but you can control yours. So what will you do if they keep breaking? Well, one, you internalize because they might not know if somebody you don't know. Two, you restate your boundary. Here's another example. Someone keeps asking you to do something over and over again, and you've said no. Here's how you respond. I realize you really need help, but I'm not available. You don't even have to say I'm sorry. You can. You can say you're sorry. I'm sorry. I hear you. I hear you're really busy and you're moving and you really need extra hand, but I'm not available. It's that simple. And, if you say no enough, they can be mad, but you set your boundary. You are learning how to say no. How about for moms? Here's one. I always had the house where my kids invited all their friends over. I wanted the home where all the kids wanted to hang out. So we made it cool. We made it fun. They had a yard that they hung out in and built bonfires, and our lower level, like a walkout basement, was their hangout. But oftentimes they would come over like on a Friday and I had to work on Saturday morning. So there was a rule, there was a boundary. As a mom, I had to say, hey, I love that your friends are here, but at 10:30, it's quiet time. You guys can't be roughhousing anymore. It can't be loud. It can't be any of that because lights out for mom. I'm upstairs, and if I can still hear you upstairs and this boundary is crossed, everybody has to go home. So that's an example of how you would set it as a mom. Confronting someone who jumps your fences can trigger your insecurities. They just do. So if you find that you have to, someone's breaking your boundary and you need to say something and you're afraid to say something, you're normal. That's normal. You're afraid of how they're going to respond. Maybe it's hard, first of all, because you look like this person that, is coming at them and you're not. You've already established this fence and they keep crossing it. So it triggers these insecurities of fear. How are they going to respond? Are they going to like me anymore? Is it going to end my friendship or my relationship? Or worse, this whole fear of abandonment. Are they going to abandon me and tell people I'm terrible? That is fear. Don't listen to it. You don't have to go at them yelling. Go at them in a quiet, respectful way, the exact same way you would want to be approached, because you matter. And here's the thing about setting boundaries that you will notice if you've never done it. People that have continuously mistreated you for a very long period of time won't like them. They are going to fight those fences left and right. Let me tell you from personal experience, they don't like it. They will call you, I've been called a feminist. I've been called, selfish. I've been called all different things for my boundaries, but I wasn't controlling their behavior. Remember, I was controlling how I was going to respond to it if they crossed this fence. They don't like it, and you're going to have to be okay with that because it's time for you to step into your greatness, step into your fierce power with fierce grace. You don't have to be some screaming, angry woman. You can just be matter of fact. Hey, this is what I need for us to be successful in this friendship, this working relationship, this marriage, whatever it is. And if you can't honor that, this is how I will respond. That's what it's all about. Here are some signs that you need to work on this, because all of us can listen to this episode and go, yeah, that sounds good, but I'm good. But maybe you're not. Maybe there's some area where you need some help. Let me just see if I can trigger some thoughts in you. Signs that you need to build some fences, some strong boundaries. You have trouble saying no. We already covered it. Because you hate letting people down. That one is one of the first boundary practices that therapists will put out there. Learn how to say no. People won't like it. I'm telling you, they won't like it because they're used to being their yes girl. You're going to have to practice it. Just say no. You don't know who you are. Who are you? Why don't you know who you are? Is it because you're too busy living for everyone else's expectations? Because you can't say no? Do you know your purposes and your passions? Do you know who you are? There is a chance, if you're struggling with that question, that you need some better boundaries because people are getting pieces of you all over the place and you don't really have yourself whole yet. You fear rejection and abandonment. If you fear rejection and abandonment, this goes back to you're not going to say no. You're going to be everything to everyone. And that, my friend, is a recipe for disaster. It turns into a dumpster fire. You begin resenting them. You don't want that. Don't be everything for everyone. Be you. That is your magic. And then say no to the things that aren't you. Simple. Not that simple, but I'm trying to make it simple. Okay, here's one. You overshare with people who you're not close to. Okay, that is a major sign that you're hurting and that you don't have self-respect enough to have your own personal boundaries. People that don't know you don't want to hear all of your gritty details unless they say, tell me more. If that's not the conversation, if it's more you just spilling, I want you to be careful about that. I also want you to examine why you're doing that. Where do you need some help and boundaries? Where have you been wounded and hurt to get you to the point that you're going to talk to anybody with all these nitty-gritty details? That's a sign that you need to start setting boundaries somewhere in your life. If you chronically feel like a victim or a martyr, if it's always woe is me, if you feel like it's just the way it is, they always put me to work on it, they never ask her, or I don't know why I'm the one that always has to get to work early, I'm the one that turns on the coffee machine, I do all the things because nobody else will do it if I don't do it. Well, whose fault is that, sister? Boundaries. You're not going to win friends with that conversation. People are going to respect you more if you stop doing those things or you have boundaries around those things. People that are always in the victim mindset are not going to move forward in their life. They're stuck. Setting boundaries helps you get unstuck. You need to recognize where you are constantly a martyr, constantly in the negative space. Set some boundaries. If you're annoyed a lot, I might be striking a nerve, but people who are often chronically annoyed by everything, they don't have good boundaries. Is that you? Are you just always ticked off? Can you believe what this person said on the news? Can you believe the behavior of this person? Can you believe, oh my gosh, my kids, they're little, I can't stand, by the way, when I hear a mom call her kids idiots, it's nails on a chalkboard to me, but I've heard it, right? These little idiots are blah, blah, blah. It all is just a buildup of the person who's chronically annoyed and ticked off of not having good boundaries. They're tapped out. And you know what? It's on that tapped out person to set the boundaries to be healthier, happier. You need boundaries around that stuff, sister. It's no fun being chronically annoyed, and nobody wants to hear someone on a rant all the time. It's not fun. If you feel disrespected and you blame others for it, I was in this situation. I struggled with this narcissistic friendship for years. I reached out to people like, am I crazy or is this wrong? I knew it was wrong. I was trying to hold on to a friendship that was so unhealthy. It was just verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, and they come back and forth, right? They love bomb you with friendship or however, like if it's a romantic relationship or a friendship, they will come at you and make you feel like you are the most incredible thing on the planet. And it could be a week later, they ghost. And then in a month, they come back and they act like nothing's wrong. And then they start calling you names or whatever. You're just frustrated. You're disrespected. You have to explain to this person what respect is. No. If you find yourself having to explain to another adult what respect is, you need a fence, a big fence. Time to set some boundaries. I'll tell you what, it was hard for me to do. When I set a boundary around a narcissistic relationship, best therapy ever. And it's also the best revenge. Honestly, if you want to think of it that way, tell yourself what you have to get there, because those things are dangerous, those relationships. If you do things out of expectation, not because you want to. Okay, I want to explore this one. This is a reason you may need boundaries, but also there are times where you're in a situation where you will have some expectations, right? If you're in a relationship where it's a partnership and it's give and take, there are some expectations that, I don't know, I'll cook, you clean, right? Or I'll do this, you take out the garbage. Those kinds of expectations are built-in relationship agreements. I'm talking about you are doing everything because you think that's what they want you to do. You went to college because that was expected. You didn't really want to. Now, is that bad? No, but I'm just saying it could have been. Maybe you were going to be the best hairstylist ever, and you should have gone to beauty school because that's your passion, but you went to college because that was the expectation. Then you got married because that was the expectation. All of those things, if you're living for someone else's expectation, not because it's something that you're passionate about doing, you need some boundaries. Finally, and I kind of already hit on this, the number one reason that you would ever need to set a boundary or build some fences is if you are in a relationship that has a high drama, high conflict, it's difficult. If it's not mutually respectful give and take, that's not a healthy relationship. Someone is going to have to put their foot down. And now that you've listened to this episode, you know that someone is you. There is nothing more attractive and sexy than a woman who knows who she is, who knows what her values are, and she puts her foot down and she builds some fences around her mental health, her physical body, all of it. It empowers you. This is the message for this week. Challenge yourself, examine your life. Where do you need to build some fences? Thanks for listening. It bears repeating. The things that you complain about most are oftentimes areas where you do not have strong enough boundaries. It's time to self-reflect if you find yourself frustrated in certain areas, continually in your own head maybe, complaining about it. Time to set some boundaries, build some fences, walls and windows, whatever you want to call it. I hope that this episode helped you today. Don't forget to hit subscribe so that you get notified when the next episode releases. And most importantly, if you know someone struggling with this very issue, especially in a relationship, share this episode. Someone did that for me, and it took about 10 times for someone to keep sending me stuff on self-worth, self-respect, narcissistic abuse, boundaries. Finally, I learned, I'm going to set some boundaries. It helps. So be there for them. Share it with them. And until next time, have a fierce, fun, feminine, and fabulous day.